PodcastCoug Season 7, Episode 5.
You're listening to the PodcastCoug Radio Network with your host, James Laurie. The PodcastCoug is your weekly Coug On Demand show featuring all things Cougs and Washington State Cougar football. And now, here is your host, PodcastCoug.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the PodcastCoug. I am James Laurie, the PodcastCoug, and you are listening to the PodcastCoug, where we're all things Cougar football, 30 minutes of Coug talk, and we're talking about our tough but close loss to Oregon last Saturday in our upcoming homecoming game against Cal, the 3-1 Cal Bears this Saturday. So yeah, last Saturday, what a heartbreaker, right? I mean, although that drive home wasn't too bad going home, it wasn't one of those gut-wrenching, it wasn't too bad driving home, but I'll tell you, I think I shook it off in like 30 minutes, right? So we did play well, right? I mean, just not the total defensive effort we've seen in the first 4 games or 3 games, right? Plus too many lateral passes, from Cam, and not teaching Cam to take off instead of running backwards, right? We're going to talk about that, right? Still a great effort, right, on offense, but those painful lateral passes, right? How about those lateral passes? Come on, right? Just throw the ball downfield. I mean, come on. I want an Anthony Gordon performance, right? I mean, I don't think we're going to see AG, but it is, everybody's different in life, and we're seeing Ward, and that's what it is. And the issue is we have Eric Morris, and at a Power 5 level, an OC that's making a ton of money and lessons learned. But I mean, you got to wonder if he's playing at a Power 5 level, right? Mr. Morris, right? I don't think necessarily he's ready. I mean, sure, he's capable, but you either got the right guys on the bus or you don't have the right guys on the bus. And I'm not saying Cam Ward is not a good quarterback. He is a Houdini, a magician of all. He's the greatest Houdini there is, right? I mean, as far as quarterback. But that deep and intermediate ball is many times open, and Cam just can't find him. He can't find those deep and intermediate balls that are open, those guys down the field. And, so what do? You run the ball. What do you do on 1st and 10 and 3rd and long? How many times? Twice it was 3rd and long we ran the ball? I mean, really? I mean, is this a one-page playbook and it's peachy? I mean, it's easily, to reveal Morris's playbook. I mean, that's not that difficult. So vertical passes require time to throw, and our pass blocking isn't consistent enough to give time to throw the ball downfield. Simple as that. The O-line really is the problem, right? Credit Cam for getting out of the pocket, making plays, that Houdini stuff, great dump offs, really good at that. But obviously, we're at a talent disadvantage against both Wisconsin and Oregon, right? Anybody who follows college football knows that. I mean, we really study what's going on here, right? I mean, what's important is that Dickert, really, this is what really is important. Dickert has created a great team environment, and you could tell that he's got the Cougs believing in each other. They're playing together as a team, playing better than anything that their talent should allow. I mean, committing to a philosophy and using a lot of rotation to help guys play aggressively, fresh, getting into the red zone. I mean, it's just obvious that, he's doing a lot of great stuff, including that Oregon game. But the issue isn't getting bigger dudes on the defensive line. If you watch the game and watch the press conference, that our biggest issue defensively is that we just don't have the right talent in the secondary. Right? I mean, our linebackers are great at disrupting the run, and they're playing their tail off. I mean, just their butt off, right? They lack the speed to cover in space. As much as Deion Henley is great, and he is, as much as I like Deion, right, his weakness is exploited in the type of pass coverage. Right? And so our secondary players have shown that they struggle with minimizing available space for competing to operate in, with the team. So we don't need larger personnel. We need our players to read and recognize what opposing teams are doing more consistently. consistently. So, that pick six by Maui Young-O was excellent example of a player knowing exactly what's coming. I mean, credit to him, but we need more of that right now. Notice how Dickert and his players talked about execution, and I'm always talking about execution, not making excuses, but needing different people, right? So hats off, he Dickert is doing everything right, but one thing that about Dickert is that he knows how to bring a team together and get them to play as hard as possible as they can. Only time's going to tell if Dickert and everybody and his staff can get these X's and O's, because I do agree that there's a lot of work to do in terms of personnel management and being a leader. And I say that Dickert is clearly better than Mike Leach. And I never would have ever dreamed in a million years. I've said it before. I never thought that there would be ever life after Leach. But if you take all of our coaches in the history of Washington State that I can ever remember, I personally think that Dickert could be the best coach we have ever seen hit the Palouse. My question is, how long is he going to be around? Yeah, he's got his young kids in school. We don't want to pull our kids out of school. We get that. I get that. But when somebody throws a $7 million offer at you or a $6 million offer, I just hope he's going to be around for 15 years, because we do have a gem here, And, this is his defense. It's the first bad game in 9 games, really, and it really wasn't that bad. Oregon's got a bunch of dudes. They got a bunch of NFL caliber O-linemen. They've got guys. They've been graded the best in their passing O-line, coming into this game, including a game, that even Georgia, they're very, very, very good. And, we had a really good test. And Dickert is a very good coach, defensively as well. So, we were just outmatched and outpowered, and that's what happens sometimes, right? I mean, you either have it or you don't, right? And too bad we couldn't make a play to pull it out at the end and chances and just to seal it, and we just couldn't get it done. And that's just what happens. I mean, you lead the entire game, but there was never a moment. I mean, you knew this. There was never a moment we just could sit down and just relax. I mean, we were always on the edge, because you knew at the very end it's not over until it's over, right? It just isn't. I don't care how many seconds are left on the clock, right? So my concern is that Oregon just, laid out the blueprint on how to run up a ton of yards against our scheme. Can the defense continue to hold these teams in the red zone? And yeah, Dickert's got a lot of work to do, and he'll be working on it, right? Everything that he has in his power to do, he's going to do it. But sure, he's got a lot of work to do. He's a strategist, right? And his players, they work their butts off for 60 minutes. And, when you're Washington State playing the Oregons or the USCs, and they're always scheming against your angles on these favorable matchups, because really, almost always you're going to be physically outmatched. I'm concerned, when we're playing SC, that's another game that we're going to be outmatched all day long. So, they didn't have the answers on Saturday, and I suspect that a lot of that is with Oregon and their, particularly this year and how good they are. So they're going to put up some large numbers on most of the teams this season, except for Georgia. Oregon is they've got guys, and they're going to be a contender. So I do feel like, Dickert's going to get our defense to respond. I mean, did you notice that Ron Stone Jr. and Brennan Jackson were schemed out of the game? I mean, completely, right? It wasn't a lack of effort. They played hard. I'm just not concerned, about Dickert making the right adjustments. He's, by and large, done it game after game. And maybe more importantly, at halftime, he's made those adjustments of games he's coached in, right? So I'm disappointed, though, that we lost and got torched defensively, but have no concerns of our defense all of a sudden faltering the rest of the year, the rest of the season. They'll step up, they'll, reset, next, here we go, rebound, here we go. So speaking about the rest of the year, right? We've got a game on Saturday. We're talking about the Cal Golden Bears Saturday next, coming up right here on the second half of the Podcast Coug.
Hey, Coug fans. You're podcasting with James Laurie and the PodcastCoug Radio Network. The Podcast Coug is your weekly Coug on Demand show, featuring all things Cougar football in Washington State. To help you get through the week, hit the subscribe button or check us out on iTunes, the App Store, iOS, Google Play, Stitcher, or at PodcastCoug.com.
The real estate agent you work with matters, and a great agent helps you own the home of your dreams. And your dreams come true with James Laurie at Coldwell Banker Bain, representing clients like you 24/7, from condos to colonials and everything in between. If you're selling, buying, need a price analysis, or just a contractor referral, ask James, winner of the 2015 through 2019 International Coldwell Banker Diamond Award, with dozens and dozens of 5-star Zillow reviews and Seattle Magazine's 5-star award winner for 2018 through 2020. James Laurie, Coldwell Banker Bain, at 425-466-3672 or jameslaurie.net. Rock solid results.
You're listening to the Podcast Coug.
Two running backs in with the quarterback. Signals called. All man in motion going through to the right side. Handoff. Wings out to the right side. Touchdown, Washington State.
You are listening to the Podcast Coug.
Welcome back to the second half of the Podcast Coug. I am James Laurie, the Podcast Coug, where we're all things Cougar football, all things Cougs. Cal at Washington State, Pac-12 Network, 2:30. Martin, both teams are 3-1. Homecoming, right? Special halftime 1997 Rose Bowl reunion with Mike Price and some of the Rose Bowl players. That sounds fun. Got to be fun. Cougs open up as 4-point favorites finally, right? We got some momentum here, and both teams, you know, we're entering 3-1. Both teams 3-1. Cal has the only conference win of the two, right? But the Cougs have played a tougher schedule, and we really look better between the two. But no matter how good Washington State appears to be, Cal, our series has historically been really a thorn. I mean, it has been just crazy the past decade. I mean, back and forth this past decade with Wazoo and Cal. Here we go. It's Washington State. We've traded wins about every season the last 6 years, right? Now, Cougs haven't lost to the Golden Bears in Pullman since 2014. 119 points were scored in 2014. We won a stunner 60-59. That's the last time the Bears they haven't lost. We haven't lost in Pullman since 2014. So now 2017, Cougs enter in Berkeley, right? We were ranked top 10 team. We're coming into Berkeley. We just left shocked, right? Berkeley boys. I call them the Berkeley boys. The Bears completely dominated number 8 Washington State. They won 37-3. And then, of course, the next year, revenge with Gardner Minshew. Bears nearly won, but we eked out. Aesop Winston, right, hauled in a 10-yard score, just 32 seconds left on the clock, gave the Cougs a win 19-13. Then in 2019, it was a 33-20 win in Berkeley. And of course, COVID canceled the 2020 game, which was called off literally hours before kickoff. And then in 2021, Cal was a touchdown favorite, and it went right down. You know, we went down to Berkeley, and the Cougs, we just played the spoiler this time, right? Calvin Jackson Jr. pulled an unreal one-handed end zone grab, and was just one of those amazing grabs, right? That they show it on ESPN all over, right? Cougs beat Cal 21-6 last year, but we can absolutely expect another battle in Pullman on Saturday, as we're just a 4-point favorite. Yeah, so as long as I can remember, our games against Cal have been just really, really tight. Really close, right? And vividly, I remember Coug Zone message boards. This is going way back to 1997, right after the internet was just getting going, and Coug Zone came on message boards. This is something so new, so fun. bantering back and forth with posts with Berkeley fans. I remember that, message boards were really new, and you can go online and just talk some trash about the competition, and it was all fun, right? There were really no rules or unwritten guidelines, but today, we come in peace, as gentlemen. We don't really, things are different today, right? But I remember those days, and ever since then, it's been really, really, really tough with Cal. Really tight, right? Last Saturday, Cal blew past Arizona 49-31 in Berkeley. They had a signature win. That was obviously a conference win. The deal is Jaden Ott, right? That's right, Jaden Ott. Breakout performance, stud running back. Jaden Ott. The Bears just blew past the Wildcats 28-7 in the second half. They just took command, and Ott just had 274 yards, 3 touchdowns, 19 carries, averaging 14 yards a carry. True freshman from California, broke off runs of 73, 72, 31. Again, Ott's yards total, 274, highest in a game by an FBS player this year. The guy is the real deal. Won Pac-12 Offensive Player of the Week, showing against Arizona. He almost had a perfect grade from Pro Football Focus, just a perfect grade for a college running back in 6 years. So he's getting a lot of press out there. We certainly got our hands full, right, on Saturday. Jaden Ott is going to be one of the biggest stars in the Pac-12. Again, he's a true freshman, right? And quarterback Jack Plummer, not Jake Plummer, right? Former ASU and Arizona Cardinal quarterback. Not Jake, but Jack Plummer, senior, from actually transferred from Purdue. He passed for 18 of 28, 245 yards, 3 touchdowns. But the Wildcat defense couldn't contain Ott at all. Delora threw 2 fourth quarter interceptions to lose the game, and that one's on Delora as well. But the Bears are a much improved football team. They're kind of one dimension now with Ott, but you know what? This is a guy that's going to be hard to contain. Cal's defense shined in wins over UC Davis, that's FCS, and then UNLV. But the Bears came up short against on the road, Notre Dame, 24-17. They lost. They fought the Fighting Irish, 17-14 heading into the fourth quarter. It was tight, but then their passing defense had some slip-ups, and just the Bears lost, against Notre Dame. Now, Ott ranks first in Pac-12, 11th in the country at 463 rushing yards. He's 6 foot, 205. Man, he's a game changer. Big rushing attack, very explosive, really, really good. And, it's going to be hard. It's going to be hard to tackle this guy, right? One guy just can't do it, right? It's got to be a gang tackle. We just got to make sure that we just try to bottle him up. He's hitting the big play, and we've got to have the ability to just, make it happen. And he can make you miss, and he can go for the distance, right? So, again, and Jack Plummer is performing well in his first season as the Bears. Again, he came from Purdue, and he replaced Chase Garbers the past 4 years. But Plummer has, he's passed for 975 yards, 8 touchdowns, 2 picks, and he's got a 62% completion rate. So Plummer is good. He's good escapability, right? Good pocket passer, with Cal running the ball really well and efficiency, they're just going to take the ball down the field. And, I think these guys this is not going to be an easy game. Their offensive line ranks really near the bottom of, the bottom 10 nationally in pass protection and running blocking, and they've given up 12 sacks. So expect our defense to really step up on these guys, and running into an Oregon elite O-line, the Cougs defensive front could be really well ready for a huge bounce back against the Berkeley boys. And, we need to be more physical this week against Cal, no doubt, and more than we were than Oregon. I think that's going to happen, right? So we've talked about the air raid. As Cam should be able to continue to improve his skills, although his weaknesses against the Bears secondary, he ranks 89th nationally with 250 passing yards per game, and Ward has passed for over 1,100 yards this season, 25th in the FBS, 10 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. He's got a 69% completion rate, a little bit better than Plummer, but our up-tempo system emphasizes, quick throws and playmakers in space, and several guys have caught the ball and shown some real good potential for the future. But as mentioned in the first half of the podcast, Coug, our vertical passing game has been underwhelming so far, right, to say the least, right? So our ground game is averaging 97 yards per game, last in the Pac-12, right? So I was hoping to see Jenkins more against Oregon. He had a good run against Oregon, but I'd like to see Jenkins some more. I think that, he's got some great potential, but stopping the run is where the bottom line is with Cal. We've got to contain Jaden Ott, and Washington State and Cal are basically identical in scoring offense. We're averaging like 30 points a game and scoring defense. And so Justin Wilcox, his 6th year at Cal, he's got similar defensive schemes and got a great creative and sound defensive front play. And, getting 7 tackles for a loss against the Ducks. The Cougs lead the country in tackles for loss at 38. Deion Henley leads the Pac-12. 4th in the nation, 9 tackles for a loss. And Donovan Ollie, receiver, is 2nd. He's got 24 receptions, leads the Cougs in catches and receiving yards at 263. So it should be a good game. We just got to contain that Jaden Ott. Weather, I have not checked the forecast. It's drizzling in Seattle. It was a great weekend. Great Saturday in Pullman last Saturday. Even though the outcome wasn't there, but the drive home, like I said, wasn't as painful as it had been in the past. So, hey, that's it for episode 5 of our 7th season of the podcast, Coug. Thank you so much for listening. It's Cal, the California Golden Bears at Washington State. God bless and go Cougs.
You've been listening to the Podcast Coug with your host, James Laurie. The Podcast Coug is your weekly Coug on Demand show featuring all things Cougs and Washington State Cougar football. This has been a presentation of the Podcast Coug Radio Network. Find us at PodcastCoug.com.
Yeah.